So we're up to Lamed Aladam and Beis. Amalei Rava Lirav Nach. Regarding this principle that we established on the bottom of the previous Amud, that Eino Isha Misaberes Mibir Rishonovat Tamar, who was married first to Er, the son of Yehuda, and then he died, and then Onen was Miyabim, the wife of his brother, Ubibir Rishona, Iabra, and then Yehuda, when he got to have a relationship with her, she was still a Besula, because Ervi Onan had a Bia Shalom Kedar, as we'll see in the Gemara. Amalei, so he answered Tamar, Bi Etzba Ma. In other words, what prevents a woman from getting pregnant with Be'ila Rishona is the fact that she has Besulim. But she, Tamar, who was very eager to become pregnant, removed her Besulim manually before she had Bia with you, and therefore she became pregnant. Rabbi Yitzchak called Moachos Shel Beis Rebbe. In Beis Rebbe, they were very religious. They didn't want a person to have a Bia without the possibility of becoming pregnant. So what they did was they would remove their Besulin manually. And Tamar Shman, and they are called by the name of Tamar. Lama Nikra Shman Tamar al Shem Tamar Shemiacha Etzba'a. Again, the Mefarshim point out this process of Miacha Be'etzbas takes place in the presence of the husband, because Be'ila Rishona and Besulin would prove that she was loyal during the time of Erusin, etc. So the Gemara asks, V'hahavi ervi onan. How could you tell me that at the time of the Be'ila to Yehuda, Tamar was a Besula, and she removed her Besulin? Her Besulin were removed by ervi onan. And the Gemara answers, ervi onan, shimshu shalo kedarkan, shalo b'mokum biyah. So therefore, her Besulin were intact. Rabbi Yehuda, and when Yehuda came to have beer with her, she was mema'eches absula beforehand, and she became pregnant for that. Meisvei, are you really telling me that Ervi Onan had beer shelo kedarkon? We have a brisa about a meinekes, a mother who is nursing a baby called Esther v'arba chodesh for 24 months from the time of the Leda. When she is nursing, the Baal, this is a shita that we're about to learn in the name of Rabbi Eliezer, the Baal, who has a relationship with his wife during those 24 months, if he has a Bia Kedarka, she may become pregnant and she won't be able to nurse her baby, and the baby might be in danger. So therefore, Rabbi Eliezer advocates Dash mi bifnim v'zora mi bachutz. So he has a Maisa Bia, but he removes his member in order that he shouldn't make her pregnant. So he ejaculates outside of her body. Amru, the Chachamim say, how can you allow such a thing? What about the Anoshim Halolu, meaning Erviona? They would dash mi bifnim, v'zora mi bachutz, and eino el kamais erviona. They were chayv misa for that. Onish misa b'dei shamayim. So we see clearly that ervionon were involved in a bia b'makom bia, meaning a bia kedarka, because even Rabbi Eliezer, he doesn't say that they were boel shalom kedarka. He just says that dash mi bifnim and Zora Mibachutz was acceptable. And the Chacham say, well, that's a Maisa Erviona. It seems that everybody agrees that that's what they did, Erviona. They did this Dash Mibifnim V'Zora Mibachutz, which means it was a Bia Kedarka. So Tamar, therefore, was not a Besula. So why do you have to tell me that she was Mema Eches Besula? And the Gemara answers that when the Chachamim said about Erev Yonah, they would dashmi b'fnim v'zorim b'chutz. And they said that when you're advocating Rabbi Elazar is exactly that in the case of Menekes. What they meant was not that it's legamre kemaise Erev Yonah, but kemaise Erev Yonah v'lo kemaise Erev Yonah. It's kemaise Erev Yonah that they were mashchis zara, meaning their zera could not make her pregnant. Dichsiv vaya in ba, vaya means kasher in. Vaya im means kasher baal eishes achiv v'shiches arza. This is referring to Onan. When he had a relationship with Tamar, he was shiches arza. But lo kemaisa erev Yonah de ilu hasam shalo kedarka v'hacha kedarka. And the first want to know that how did the Gemara know that erev Yonah were boel shalo kedarka? I guess they were afraid if it would have been kedarka, that maybe she would have gotten pregnant. Gemara says Bishlema Onan. I understand that Onan was shofech kedarka. Why? The ksiv bevis shiches arza. Ela er minolan. How do you know that he Onan was also was guilty of the same aver shiches arza? Rav Nachman Yitzchak to siva yomas gam oso. And the extra word gam is teaching of who be osa avera, for which he was chayav misa, mesi died. So both Erev Yonah were guilty of the avera of shiches arza, of being mashchis zaram mibachutz. So Gemara says, Bishlem Onan, I understand what motivated him to be mashchis arza shum lo yiyazara, because he was being mekayim the mitzvah of Yibum, so the child would not be his child, it would be his brother Er's child. The Er, the first one, like Taima Avidah. He found her very attractive as a flat-bellied woman before she became pregnant. She didn't want to become pregnant, which would be Makrish Haryot. The Torah says, "Each this Vayikra as well. Each asher yishkav ish osa shichas zora v'rachatzu b'mayim v'tomar ha'oretz." In other words, a woman becomes tmeya through bia, and it says osa. Says Rabbi Yehuda, the word osa is a miut prat lekala. A kala cannot become pregnant through bia rishona, and therefore she doesn't become tmeya through her bia. Chacham Omrim, no, a kala will become tmeya, but the word osa is prat l'shalo kedarka, which means that the bia was shalo b'makom. And in a bia shalo kedarka, she doesn't contract tumah. Amalei, so a chacham by the name of Hon, brother of Nachman, says to his father of Nachman, Lema, shall we say that Kasav of Yehuda, that the reason why a kala is not nitmes b'bia is because HaTorah chasal tachshchit nashim, and all the cosmetics that were prepared for a Yom Chuppah, now she's going to have to, after bia, go into the mikvah with any chatzitza, and the water is going to completely remove all her chal and srak, all the, the niskashtabam, all the beautiful cosmetics. That's a lot of money. No, that's not what's going on here. The reason why the Torah says that a kala is not tmeya through the first bia is the fee. She birishona shalisha isha misaberes mi birishona. We're talking about a kala, and this is the first time she cannot become pregnant from that first bia. And the Torah says isha shayish isha osa shichva zara. Shichva zara means that she could conceive a child, then vitama. But if it's the first bia, she cannot conceive a child. And he needs the word osa, and it's not enough to derive it from Shikva Zora, because it could be that Shikva Zora means that the Tuma of Bia is because the Bia was a place where there could be Shikva Zora. It doesn't mean on this Bia, it could be on the next. But the Osa is excluding, in a case where on this Bia, it's not possible for this to be a conception. What's Machlokes Rabbi Yehuda and Chacham? Rabbanan Savri, Shikva Zora, is Prat La'ora, is excluding a case of Tchilas Bia, because there's no Hazra in Tchilas Bia, right? Hazra, where she could possibly conceive, that's only Bigmar Bia. So without penetration, she can't conceive. And Osa is Prat, Lishalok Kedarka, because it's not a Makom where she could possibly conceive. But as far as Bia Rishon of a Kala, she does have the potential eventually in that Makom of becoming pregnant. Rabbi Yehuda Savar Shalok Kedarka and Ha'ora Mishichva Zora. We can exclude both those cases as far as Tumas Bia, because the Torah says Shichva Zora, Nafka. And therefore he has an extra Pasuk Osa as a Miut Prat Lakala, because even though we would not exclude Kala from Shichva Zora, because that's a Bia in a Makom Aruya Lazriya, but nevertheless, Osa comes to exclude a Bia which is not Royal Lazriya. And that's the case of Bia Rishon of a Kala. He also Ravin, when Ravin came from Babel to Eretz Yisrael, Omar, he said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, I'm not sure, I think maybe Ki Asa Ravin means when he came from Eretz Yisrael to Babel, Omar Rabbi Yochanan, he said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Kol sheshasa achar baila eses shonin. If a woman, after getting divorced, I'm not sure if it's dafka divorce, it could be after she was widowed, but 10 years passed by and she didn't have a bila with anyone else, then in this shuv she gets remarried, any oledus. She cannot become pregnant. Somehow her biological system changes after that 10-year period, and she won't become pregnant. Omer Rav Nachman, when does this apply? Lo shanu ela she'ein daita li nase. That during those 10 years, she has no intention of getting remarried. Aval daita li nase misaberes. If she has in mind that she wants to get remarried, or maybe she has in mind a specific person that she wants to get remarried to, then even though 10 years pass by until she finally achieves that dream and realizes that goal, she will become pregnant. Amalei Rava, Bas Rav Chizda, Rava says to his wife, who is the daughter of Rav Chizda, now, she was previously married to Rami Bar Chama. Rav Chizda actually turned to her before she got married. It offered her a choice. She'd rather marry Rami Bar Chama or Rav. So she really wanted to marry both of them. And for whatever reason, she married Rami Bar Chama. And he died. 10 years passed as an almana until she married Rav. So Rava turns to his wife because she became pregnant, and he told her, "Kamaranani Rabbanah Basrit." The Rabbanah wondering, did you have some sort of relationship during that 10 years of almanas? How were you able to become pregnant? Because after my husband Rami Bar Chama died, and my father, Rav Chizda, had offered me a choice of your hand in marriage, Rava, I was always waiting for the time that I would be remarried to you. The Gemara tells another story. I heed the Asya Lakami de Rav Yosef, Amra Lo Rebbe, Anosha Hisi Achabayli Eseshan of Yoladity. The Rabbanan are making up a whole story. I can tell you in my my own, forget about Rabbi Yochanan says you can't become pregnant after 10 years. I was married after 10 years since my Baal Rishon passed away or divorced me. I married a second time and I became pregnant. The Chacham said you cannot be pregnant unless you had another relationship during the 10 years. So don't spread word, against the Chacham. Maybe you should confess that during that 10 years you had a relationship. And she confessed. Okay, then, so we're towards the bottom here of Lamed Dalet Amud Beis. Omar Shmuel, 6 lines up from the bottom, and that's where we're going to stop.